Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Foot Attacker podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. As I quickly check the background, make sure it's okay. Yes, I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos. Welcome back to episode 11 of season 3 of the Two Foot Attacker podcast. Hope everyone is well. I am slightly hungover. I had surprisingly, I indulged on Sunday night. I say on Sunday night, last night. It's currently 3 o'clock Monday afternoon, and yeah, it's just slightly hungover, but toon Nurofen when you get home. Honestly, lifesaver. That's going into the kitty for future reference. And for those who need any tips, toon Nurofen when you get home. You'll feel great the next morning. But yes, so slightly croaky voice, maybe slightly looking a little bit less vibrant, maybe a little bit more kind of dead behind the eyes at times, but we power through, and there's a lot of football to speak about. A lot happened throughout the week, so I'm sure I'll be keeping myself entertained for the next 40 odd minutes, and hopefully I can keep everyone else entertained as well. But before we start, everyone as well, as always, hope your team won on the weekend. Unless your team's Burnley, then suck shit. If there's any Burnley fans watching, I'll be shocked, but there you go. Yes, everyone's well. Hope everyone enjoyed their weekend. If you suffered the same kind of hungover fate as what I have over all today, but probably I'm more likely than not on a Sunday, then I hope you enjoyed all of your gallivanting around. But before we kick things off, we have to do the obligatory admin before we start. Make sure you subscribe to Two Foot Attacker Podcast on YouTube. Notification bell, like the podcast, all that good stuff. It does mean the world. Sharing it around would mean the world. Is really, really appreciated. And of course, all the socials, Two Foot Attacker Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Link in the bio of both Twitter and Instagram for all your Two Foot Attacker podcasting needs. And then all the audio platforms, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Anchor, and Spotify. For the audio stuff, even if you do watch on YouTube, just head on over to the audio platforms, give it a follow, give it a rate. It would mean the world. Even just like click play and have it go on mute for 40 minutes, and then you don't even have to watch it. Just go like 25, 30 minutes in and then just leave it. But yes, should we crack on? There's a lot of football to speak about as we can move on from my kind of gallivanting around on a crown on a Sunday. But no, I feel fine. I actually feel okay. Surprisingly, and for those who are with me, and for those some of the people who are with me do listen, I was in a little bit of a state, surprisingly, because I didn't really think I would be indulging as much as I did, but I did indulge, and it, much to the surprise of me, I was relatively fine when I woke up this morning. So, you know what? Maybe it was the Nurofen. Maybe the Nurofen did help me a lot. But yes, we'll power through. A lot to cover, so I'm sure I'll keep myself occupied. So, some announcements happened throughout the week about the 2030 World Cup, which we'll touch on. Obviously, Champions League football, and there is one game I want to speak about in regards to the Champions League action that happened, and I think you all know what game that I'm going to speak about. Paul Pogba tested positive for steroids, which has kind of gone under the radar. I don't think a lot of people have realised, but he tested positive for testosterone, which is just, like, again, I think this was his second sample. So anyway, we'll touch on that a little bit more in depth. Australia Cup final, Chelsea scored 4 goals. A little trend that I've noticed about Manchester City's losing streak, or not losing streak, but losing run, and then some other things that have happened throughout the week. So we might not get to everything today. I want to try to keep this under 45 minutes as part of the new kind of content. Not strategy, but just trying to keep the podcasts at a far more manageable length instead of podcasts that were going for 90 minutes last year. Some ridiculous thing like that. But yeah, let's kick things off and let's go straight to the 2030 World Cup. 2030 FIFA World Cup. Where do we start? It was obviously announced midweek that it would be hosted by Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. Now, I think I said this, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but I definitely said previously that I don't think we're ever going to get a World Cup hosted by one single country ever again. Euros, potentially, Copa America, I'm not too clued up about the logistics behind a Copa America. Asian Cup similar, but yeah, I don't think we'll ever get a World Cup hosted by a single country again. I think the fact that it's gone out to 36 teams, with all the infrastructure that's needed, with all the logistics and the permutations that are involved in it, I don't think I will ever see. I don't think we'll ever see a World Cup hosted in one country again. So the next best alternative is by having it hosted by a couple of countries who are in close proximity to each other, or at least have geographical relations that make sense. So the United Kingdom, for example, if they turn around and host the 2034 World Cup in England, Scotland, and Wales, that makes sense. That's fine. I don't think anyone would have any problem with that, because it's one big fucking island. It's essentially one country. I'm going to offend a lot of people when I say that, but like in terms of geographically, it's not like you're hosting a tournament. It's not like you're hosting one part of the tournament in Russia and the other part in Brazil. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very similar kind of geography. So it's fine, right? In terms of travel, I don't know how long it takes to get from London to Glasgow, but I can't imagine it takes overly long in terms of, I don't think it takes multiple days, put it that way. So yes, Morocco, Spain, Portugal. For those who know, I mean, I'd be really surprised if you didn't know. Spain and Portugal are right next to each other. That's great. Similar to how I think like the UK and the UK plus maybe not Northern Ireland, because that's a different island. But yeah, Spain and Portugal are essentially just one big island that's split, not in half, but that's split with two countries. So that's fine. Morocco is interesting. It's an interesting addition. It's going to be the first African World Cup since 2010. The second ever African World Cup, technically. The first time it'll be back. The World Cup will be back in Europe, properly in Europe. I know Russia is technically in Europe, but also half the countries in Asia. So the first time properly back in Europe since 2006, because obviously we went Africa, then South America, then Europe / Asia, then to properly Asia with Qatar or the Middle East. So yeah, there you go. That's great. So back in kind of Western Europe, I should say. And then obviously in Africa. So it's going to be interesting. I think this was the best of the available bids. I don't recall. I think Saudi Arabia was one of the 2030 bids, and we'll touch on the 2034 bid as well a little bit later, or soonish. So I don't think any other bids were within any realm of possibility of actually getting it done. So yeah, Morocco, Spain, Portugal. You've obviously got Spain and Portugal. They have very rich footballing histories. None of the countries, obviously Spain have won it before, which is pretty good. I like having a host nation of a country that has won it before. I just feel like I feel like you obviously can't do that, because I think only like 12 countries have ever won it, under 12 countries even. But I just like I like the kind of prestige about that. So yeah, Spain, host nation, their first time I think hosting a World Cup. I can't remember if they ever had before. Obviously Morocco haven't. Portugal, I don't think so either. So yeah, we're gonna get new vibes, new kind of Mediterranean / kind of North Africa kind of vibes, which is gonna be cool, because something that we missed out on in the Qatar World Cup, and it's probably one of many kind of criticisms of the Qatar World Cup, is that there wasn't really a vibe like 2010 World Cup. The vuvuzelas, all the South African and the African vibes in general were just immaculate. Even 4 years later in Brazil, we all know the kind of scenery. And when we think of the 2014 World Cup, I think everyone has a very similar idea. Whereas when we think of the 2022 World Cup, I feel like there's not like a definition of it. Whereas with like 2010, 2014, even 2002 in Japan and South Korea, there is a pure definition of that World Cup. There is like something that everyone kind of has a very similar picture of. So hopefully now with Spain and Portugal sharing similar cultures, we can get that kind of vibe going again. And then obviously that the North African vibe of Morocco as well, who we obviously saw what they did in 2022 as the footballing nation. So hopefully they can parlay that into just hosting an incredible tournament. So yeah, it's 3 countries, which will be the second time that it would happen in consecutive years. But I'm not too unhappy. I'm pretty content. I'm pretty content with those three nations. They're all in relatively close proximity of each other, which helps. They all share similar culture in parts, which I think helps as well. and obviously all three of them have pretty rich footballing histories. Obviously Morocco have a very rich footballing history in Africa. Spain and Portugal, obviously we all know how rich their footballing history dates back to. So you're going to get a lot of history, a lot of prestige, and also a lot of that modern kind of vibe and that feeling around the tournament. So fingers crossed we get a pretty good tournament, because after 22 after 18 was weird, because 18 was very sanitized, and I think for good reason, because obviously we all know the stereotypical kind of Russian hooliganism that surrounds Russian football. So they obviously had to sanitize that a lot. And then 2022 there was nothing. Like, it was purely a football tournament. There was no feeling about it, because Qatar don't, like, with all due respect, like, it's not Brazil or it's not South Africa. Whereas, yeah, so obviously in 4 years' time, or in 3 years' time, in the 2026 World Cup, Canada, obviously Mexico, we all know the Mexican flavor that they're going to add to that World Cup. America, they do everything with as much pomp and circumstance as possible. And Canada, everyone kind of, while it's not kind of Brazil in terms of the culture, everyone just loves Canada. So I think that's going to be a good mix. I think the mix in 2030 is going to be great. Fingers crossed that it all goes relatively smoothly in terms of all the logistics, and we don't get any controversies like we have with the 22 World Cup and the 2018 World Cup. I don't think there are. I think we're past that. So the final will be played at the Santiago Bernabeu, which I think is good. I think that's the best kind of the best decision I think that's the best decision that they could have done, because it is the stadium that has the most prestige about it, I think, especially of the countries hosting it. But even in the world, I mean, you've got some stadiums in South America, obviously, like you've got some stadiums in Uruguay, like in Montevideo, that stadium holds like 100,000 or something like that. You've got obviously Boca Juniors and River Plate stadiums who hold a lot of cultural significance for different reasons. And then of course in Europe you've got obviously like the likes of Wembley, which probably resonates a lot more with club football than international football. Whereas I think the Bernabeu, whilst it's Real Madrid's home, it is a stadium that every kid dreams of scoring the 91st minute winner against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, or even for Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. So yeah, happy with the Bernabeu being one of the, or being the kind of host, or being the final kind of destination. I'm a little bit out of it today. I don't know if you can tell. I wonder why that is. Yeah, so being the final kind of the destination of the final, I think it's great. Yeah, all around good vibes for the 2020 or for the 2030 World Cup. Hopefully, we should, fingers crossed, get a pretty good atmosphere around it, because I think that's the main thing about World Cups. Yeah, the football is great, but you just want a tournament that's memorable, and hopefully we can get that memorable nature about the tournament. Another reason, well, we might be able to get that memorable nature about the tournament, because the tournament will be hosted by those three countries, but also three other countries. This will be the first first World Cup technically hosted in 3 continents across 6 nations, because Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay will all host their first match. Now, I think this is done due to the centenary of the World Cup, due to an anniversary regarding the World Cup. So they are hosting each other's first. So Argentina's first game we played in Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay similar. Obviously, Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, I assume, will follow that trend. So you've got, of the groups, you've got 6 teams already qualified. You've got 6 teams already qualified. You've got 6 different host nations from 3 different continents. That could create a little bit of a head fuck. But considering it's only 1 game for the South American teams, I think it's fine. I think logistically it might cause issues, obviously, because you're going to have 6 teams traveling from South America to a base in, I assume that'd probably be based in Morocco, considering that would be the quickest flight time. And they'd probably try and do it based on kind of altitude as well, because obviously all know the altitude can create a big difference if you're traveling very drastically from different altitudes. Obviously, South America has a very interesting kind of biome, if you were to call it that. So it'll be interesting to see how those logistics work. I see this is one of those things where I think a lot of people can look at it from a negative perspective of FIFA just want money. They're showing the World Cup to 6 different countries, etc., etc. Whereas I think I'm looking at it from the perspective of, yeah, you're getting 6 different countries, but you're getting 3 host countries who have earned their right to host it. I think that's fine. And then with Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, I think there's footballing reasons behind that, and it also adds to the pomp, the circumstance, the prestige of the World Cup. It adds to the vibes. You get that South American flavor in there. I think it'll be okay. I don't think you can relate it to kind of the Qatar World Cup and the Russian World Cup in the manner in which they got it and the reasons behind they got it. I think, yes, those 3 countries probably would have paid FIFA a fuck ton in order to get the rights to host 1 game each. But I think because of the footballing reasons behind it, I think it's okay. Let me know what you guys think, of course, because I think a lot of people are going to have varying opinions on the whole tournament itself, but also those 3 South American countries hosting 1 game each. I think it's okay. I think it's. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I mean, maybe time will tell. It's fucking 7 years away, so we got time to think about it. But yeah, I'm pretty content at this stage with just seeing how that goes. Yeah, so I think it is kind of one of those things. Is that enough of the 2030 World Cup? I don't think I need to add anything more. Obviously, 2034 World Cup, would fucking love it to be in Australia. I think Australia can host an unbelievable World Cup. Like, when you look at, like, we saw how well Australia were able to host the Women's World Cup, and obviously the 2034 World Cup is going to be on a far bigger scale because of there's going to be more teams, there's going to be more people coming, etc., etc. But I think FIFA have to have looked at how well the 2023 Women's World Cup was run, how well it was hosted, the vibes, the tournament itself, and I know Saudi Arabia is going to be really hard to beat, borderline impossible to beat for the 2034 World Cup, I should say. But fuck, I'd love to see it. I'd love a men's World Cup hosted in Australia. I think it would be unbelievable. If the Women's World Cup is anything to go by, the men's game, obviously, the men's game is obviously far more popular, so more people are going to come. There's going to be far more pomp and circumstance and a lot more funding, unfortunately so, but that's a matter of how it is. More funding will be put into it, more kind of advertising, marketing, etc. will be put into it. So if we can, I mean, considering what we did with the Women's World Cup not too long ago, it would be insane to think what we could do with the Men's World Cup. So yeah, would love to see it, although there's slim to no chance of Australia beating Saudi Arabia in a kind of tournament bidding process. It's slim to none. And even though it'll be Saudi Arabia, I think by themselves, maybe with some other countries, I also think Australia and New Zealand, maybe even Indonesia as well, those 3 countries probably aren't going to stand a chance, which is very much a shame because, yeah, Saudi Arabia are a very similar mold to Qatar, probably with a little bit more footballing acumen. They've played in World Cups before. They've done well in World Cups before. They've done well in Asian Cups before. Unlike Qatar, because before their bidding process, they were basically a minnow. So, yeah, it's one of those things which football's going in that direction. So you can't really change it. You can only sit back and accept it, which is a shame. But once again, is one of those things. Okay, let's move on to some actual football. I want to go back to midweek. I want to speak about Newcastle PSG because I think this is fucking insane. Newcastle beat PSG 4-1. So Newcastle United. Imagine I sat here and told you this 3 years ago. Newcastle United just beat Paris Saint-Germain 4-1 in the Champions League group stage. 4-1. It was unbelievable. This was a game that I was so intrigued by because of everything that surrounds both clubs. Obviously, the baggage that both clubs hold, with Newcastle with their rise to success, PSG with their rise to success, how both clubs responded to the state of both of these clubs right now, the squads that both of these clubs have, the way that they've gone about their spending. I thought it was such an interesting matchup. It was something that I was extremely looking forward to when the group stage got announced. And Newcastle fucking won 4-1. It was insane. And there's this compilation going around on Twitter which I love so much, and it's a compilation of when Newcastle, I think this was when they were 4-1 up, or maybe 3-1 up. Yeah, it was like this compilation of when Newcastle are winning the game, every tackle, all the players are kind of riling the crowd up, getting the crowd involved, and I just looked at that and I was like, fuck, that's what football's about. Like that is what football's about. When you are in this kind of mode where it's just like everything is going right, the crowd is going berserk, every tackle, every corner, every shot is just cheered with such emotion and such passion. It created for one of the better spectacles I've seen watching from home. The noise coming through the fucking TV was cracked. Like it was so loud. And I can only imagine how loud it would have been at St. James's Park when that fourth goal goes in. Like, it just would have been a really magical night for Newcastle supporters. A really magical night for everyone who went through the torture that was the Mike Ashley era, the two relegations, the all that nonsense that was going on with their club, and finally they're back to argue. Some might say they don't belong here, some say that they do, but regardless, they're here, and they're not here to make up the numbers. They're here to take over, because you don't beat PSG 4-1 if you're not gonna fucking make a statement in the Champions League. So, I mean, a team with fucking Sean Longstaff, Dan Burn, Kieran Trippier, Jamal Lascelles, Fabian Schär, Miguel Almiron is beating a team with Dembele, Mbappe, Koulibaly, Marquinhos, Donnarumma, Hakimi, Skriniar. Like, these world-class footballers are getting bossed around by Sean Longstaff and Jacob Murphy. Like, what is going on? Like, is this not what football is? Like, this is football summed up perfectly. I love it. I love it. And yeah, you can say Newcastle have spent. Yes, they have spent. They've spent a lot. But also, they're rolling around in the Champions League group stages with Jamal Lascelles at centre back, with Dan Burn at left back, with fucking Sean Longstaff in midfield, Anthony Gordon on the wing. Like, these aren't world class players. They're good. They're good players who, under an elite manager, in my opinion, like Eddie Howe, under an elite system, are just getting the absolute most out of it. I think it's so good. I think it is unbelievable, and got to give credit to them. You have to give credit to them, because it was a magical, magical night. Like, and it makes. See, this is going to sound really counterproductive, right? Or maybe not counterproductive, but this is going to sound really weird considering the fact that I'm a Chelsea supporter, right? And I've seen my club win, like, I've properly seen my club win a Champions League. I can't really remember the 2012 one all that well, but I've seen my club win a Champions League, countless Premier Leagues, FA Cups, League Cups, Europa Leagues, Community Shields, fucking Super Cups, Club World Cups, the whole 9 yards, right? I've seen them win it. I've seen us win a lot. But I am jealous of those Newcastle supporters in that ground when Bruno Guimaraes slides in, wins a tackle, concedes a throw in, but riles up the crowd, and the energy and the atmosphere would have been fucking electric. That is something that I think is slowly being sanitized by the cutthroat and the commercialization of football, which Chelsea has been at the forefront of, let's be honest, for countless years. But yeah, those scenes got me a little bit jealous, not just because Chelsea are a little bit of a rabble at the moment, because even if Chelsea were really good, I still would have felt like, yeah, fuck, that would have been insane. Chelsea have had a couple of those moments where just the crowd is electrifying, and I remember Chelsea played against Liverpool. I think it might have been at the start of last year, so the start of 2022, and Chelsea drew 2-2, but we scored 2 goals in like 3 minutes on the stroke of half time, and even watching through the TV, the noise at the bridge was fucking cracked. I mean, we drew to Ajax 4-4 in the Champions League group stage. We were 4-1 down, scored 3 goals in 15 minutes, and the noise at the bridge of that day coming through the TV was insane. I can only imagine how Newcastle fans would have felt after, like I said, going through all that shit and seeing what they would have felt when fucking Fabian Schär, or people, scores the 4th. That would have been pretty good. That would have been pretty good, and I'm happy for them. I like Newcastle as a club. I really do. I like the history. I love Alan Shearer, so that's a plus. But I like the kind of rivalry that they had with United in the late 90s. All that kind of nearly winning the league, top of the league at Christmas, and not quite being able to quite do it, and the fall, going into the championship a couple of times, coming back up, having like that mini resurgence under Rafa, and then falling under Bruce, and then coming back under Eddie Howe. I really do like it. So, it was really, it was a really cool game to watch, a really cool game to kind of observe and to hear the reaction and to hear the kind of everything that was said post game about it. Yeah, really, just really cool, like really cool. And I think that's what football is, right? That's what football is, because I saw on Twitter, like that compilation I was speaking about earlier. I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, "Oh, how embarrassing is it fucking cheering a throw in when you're 3-1 up, or cheering a goal kick when you're 3-1 up." It's not about cheering the moments. It's like it would that I think for Newcastle fans was just a celebration of just it was almost like an explosion of just so much emotion that has been built up over the last decade, that like now we're finally here, like we're beating the arguably the best team in the world 4-1 at our fucking home deck. Like that would have been insane. That feeling would have been unreal. So happy for them. Fucking Miguel Almiron getting the first of all people. Miguel Almiron scored the first goal against PSG en route to a 4-1 win. And when you look at their goal scorers, I mean, it was Dan Burn, Almiron, Longstaff, and Fabian Schär. I mean, so they brought on fucking Jacob Murphy for Miguel Almiron on the 71st minute. What the hell? Like, that is insane. People don't realize how insane that is. Like, people do not realize how insane that is. When you look at PSG's team, PSG's front four consists of Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele. Maybe 4 years ago, two of the brightest young talents on the planet. Right? Two of the brightest young talents on the planet. If you would ask people 4 years ago what Sean Longstaff would have been doing, or what fucking Dan Burn would have been doing, or Jamal Lascelles, I don't think anyone would have said being a part of a team that scored 4 goals against PSG playing for Newcastle. So that's what makes football special. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they can capitalise on that. Obviously, they drew to West Ham on the weekend, which is pretty disappointing, but West Ham have been pretty good this season, so I think they can. They obviously, it was a bit disappointing conceding very late on, but they don't really. You can't really like sit here and complain about it in a sense, if that makes sense. And then they go to Dortmund, or that they host Dortmund, and then they've got a run where they go to Dortmund, they go to Paris, and then they come back and host Milan. That would be fucking awesome. That'd be so cool. So yeah, Newcastle fans are like living the dream right now. They've lost since their 3-1 loss to Brighton in September, start of September. They haven't lost. They beat Sheffield United 8-0. They beat City. They beat PSG. Unreal. Would be unreal. Being a Newcastle fan would be really fucking fun right now. I'll tell you that for free. So yeah, a little bit jealous, just a little bit jealous, but yeah, I like to live vicariously through other clubs and just the vibes. The vibes of football is what I live for, to be honest. As much as Chelsea's success is always good, looking at the vibes of football is what I take a lot of pride out of. So there you go. Let's move on. Let's move on again. What talking points should we touch on now? As I get my run sheet up, should we touch on Pogba? Let's touch on Paul Pogba. Paul fucking Pogba. What on earth has happened here? So I don't know if it. So it was news kind of like late on about Pogba and what happened with him. Obviously he tested positive to doping I want to say not long ago, but also quite a while ago, and he has recently tested positive. Paul Pogba has tested positive to a backup sample today. He's at a risk of a long-term ban, and I don't want to sit here and speak about the complexities of testing positive and should he have done it. Obviously shouldn't have done it, but like, is he in the right, is he in the wrong, what's actually happened? I actually don't really care, because I think it's quite boring, to be honest, speaking about people failing drug tests, because the short answer is shouldn't have done it, don't be a dickhead, you're banned, kind of thing, right? His contract could be terminated at Juventus, which would make him a free agent, which, I mean, that's got Saudi's knocking on the door, I'll tell you that for free, if he does get terminated. This is the thing, and this is the kind of avenue I want to go down. Paul Pogba is, I think you have to look at Paul Pogba as one of, if not the biggest wasted talents in modern football and arguably in the history of football, because that last season with Juventus, the first time, he was so good. Like I think people forget how unbelievable he was at everything: defending, going forward, playmaking, physicality, every single facet of the game. He was near on perfect. Like there was nothing he couldn't do. Like he was so good, and to see United put such an emphasis on him being the guy, I just think it was the wrong move for him, considering the turmoil that was going on at the club at the time. The coach wasn't right for him. They tried to play him as a defensive midfielder, and then they moved him up to the left side of midfield. That didn't work. He never truly got to play in his position because he had to be shoehorned into other positions because United weren't a good team at the time. Whereas at Juventus, he had Pirlo, he had Marchisio, he had all these superstar footballers that so Pogba just had the license to do whatever he wants. That's how Pogba needed to be played, and he wasn't played like that at United, and his career has never recovered. He had that one good season, I think maybe it would have been 2018-19, I think it was, or 2017-2018, where United finished second, and he was the driving force behind that kind of success for them. But apart from that, one of the biggest wasted talents in football. I mean, I'd be interested to see your guys' thoughts about what other wasted talents have there been in football, but Pogba has to be up there. Actually, I'm gonna take that to a poll. Actually, I might come back with some kind of results next week. What are the biggest wasted talents in football history? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'll probably take it to Twitter and Instagram as well to get you guys' thoughts and opinions. But yeah, I can't I just can't get over how good he was. Like I know everyone kind of remembers that goal that he scored for Juventus where he outside the foot it swerved, hit the bar and goes in. Like people remember that goal, but that was just a microcosm of a footballer that was in a zone that not a lot of other footballers have been in. Like he was exceptional because of how lanky he was. Still is because of how lanky he is, but also he's got this unbelievable kind of core strength. Like it's really hard to knock him off the ball, but he's got such long legs that he can basically just grab the ball with his legs, scoop it into his feet, and then just dribble away and explode away because he's so explosive. He's got the perfect build for a footballer. Strong, powerful, really good core strength, but not bulky where you gas out and you can get tired and you can be knocked off balance a little bit. He's just really solid he's solidly built, which I think has helped him a lot. So yeah, one of the biggest wasted talents in football. It's really sad to see the regression in his career going back to Juventus. Yeah, really, it's really sad because technically as well. I mean, I've spoken about his physical attributes as well. Technically, I mean, fucking Jesus Christ, some of the best playmaking highlights you'll ever see. So good from deep in attack, crosses into the box, through balls over the top, through balls on the ground. Was just so good, so good. So it's a big shame as to how his regression, because he was, I can't get over how good he was. He was exceptional. He was so good. But I think it's a developing story. I'm sure we'll be sitting here in a couple of weeks' time speaking about how he's going to Saudi, and now he's another player after Saudi. But yeah, really sad to see his regression because he was exceptional. He was so good. But yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Where it's football can't. There's for every success story, for every Messi, for every Ronaldo, they're success stories in their own right, but for every success story like a Jamie Vardy who surpassed expectations, there's a Paul Pogba or an Alexander Pato, these type of players who had all the hype and all the expectations in the world and were really good at some stages, but fell hard. And football takes no prisoners. Football is a game that moves on quickly. A year is a long time in football. Because it can change. So much can change in a year. I mean, yeah. So I think he is a big microcosm of that, and a big kind of cog in that whole footballing machine of just how quickly it can change. And how it takes no prisoners. It's a really interesting talking point, really fascinating, and I'm sure he's going to tell a lot when he retires. He's going to be on a lot of podcasts. He's going to tell a lot in a lot of interviews. And I think he's going to have a very interesting story because obviously we all know that his family drama, personally, he has a lot of drama going on in his life. So definitely going to be an interesting development. But yeah, Pogba, massive shame. How's this water? Goes down a treat, doesn't it? I want to speak briefly on the Australia Cup final as we move on from Portugal, but briefly on the Australia Cup final. 15,000 people. It was 15,000 people rocked up to Sydney Football Stadium to see Brisbane fall at the hands of Sydney 3-1. I thought this was a pretty good advertisement for Australia football. Not in terms of the crowd or in terms of the spectacle or whatever, but I thought the football on display was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. You see Brisbane, who were a team last year who had a not bad start and then fell away and were kind of really languaging in that no man's land where they weren't horrendous, but they weren't challenging properly for finals. They've come out with a different looking team, obviously signing Barangay. I reckon he's going to be a big part of their finals aspirations, being that number 10, kind of number 8 role. He's going to be a real driving force behind them. This season, I thought Brisbane played okay for the first half. They just really couldn't capitalise on their chances, and I think Sydney just were too strong in the end, and obviously 3-1 win, 3 goals in the last 22 minutes of football. Fabio, their new signing. What is it with Sydney FC and Brazilian strikers? Because if Fabio is going to turn out to be half the player Bobo was, the league's going to be in some strife because Bobo was a fucking baller, and Fabio scored 2 on the weekend, secured. I think it was Sydney's. It might have been Sydney's first Australia Cup. I could be wrong there. Correct me if I am. But regardless, it was a fantastic win for Sydney, coming from behind, scoring 3 in the second half. Brisbane, they had a good run. They had a very good run. I think they can take a lot of pride, a lot of solace in the fact they were able to get to the final and give it a fair shake, considering where they were last season. So I think this final is gonna be a pretty good precursor in terms of the quality of football we're gonna see for the next A-League season. I feel like, good football on display. Shame there wasn't more people turning up, but it's baby steps at the end of the day. So there you go. Brisbane can be proud. Sydney, I think Sydney will be okay this season. I think Sydney will be okay. I think they're going to be a team that it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'll probably say the A-League starts on the 20th, or on the 20th, not this weekend, the weekend after. So next week, there's international break this weekend, so there won't be a lot of football to speak about. I'm going to do a proper A-League preview next week, speaking about most of the teams, some storylines, etc. So yeah, there won't be much A-League chat this week. Next week, there's going to be a shit ton, so there you go. Am I back? I am back. I knocked my cord out of my microphone there. Should I edit that out? No, I'm going to keep it in. Editing, it'll be far too much work for me trying to edit that out. I just knocked the cord out of my mic, so I went mute for a couple of seconds there. But we're back. I can see the bar still ticking over. Slight technical difficulties, but we're okay. It's never a 2 foot attack podcast episode without slight technical difficulties, right? As I was saying, I think Sydney will be pretty good this season. I don't think they're going to be really challenging like top 2 levels, but I think they're going to make finals. That's my really not bold prediction. I think they're going to be good enough to make finals. They obviously had a pretty big squad clear out. Their squad looks not majorly different, but different enough where it's pretty striking. Obviously, they've still got Mac and Lolly, who are going to be a very dangerous kind of winger partnership, like they were last season. If both of them can stay fit, I think it's going to be very, very dangerous. So, of course, they fell in the first round of the finals last year to Western Sydney. Can they do one better? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But yes, that's my Australia Cup. That is my Australia Cup review. There you go. Moving on once again, as we are slowly wrapping things up. I was going to speak about Chelsea scoring 4 goals, but Chelsea scored 4 goals. Chelsea scored 4 goals. Like, I don't think people understand how mental that was. Chelsea scored 4 fucking goals. Not 4 fucking goals. That would be insane. That would be weird. 4 goals, for God's sake, in a game of football. I can't, that's 4 of them. 3 of them were from open play as well. Unreal. Granted, it was against Burnley, and Burnley aren't great. But, I mean, you take the small wins, right? You take the wins when they come. Anyways, this is the final talking part I want to speak on. And it's about the City. It's about City versus Arsenal. Now, I will be interested to see you guys' opinions on this, because I think it's going to be I think it's going to be interesting what I'm about to say. Maybe not interesting. Maybe it's blindingly obvious. Actually, it is blindingly obvious. I don't know why I said interesting, but I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this point that I'm about to make as the camera goes out of focus. As I'm back in focus, there we go. City have lost 3 out of their last 4 games. They've lost their last 3 games in domestic competitions, 2 in the Premier League, 1 in the AFL Cup, and those 3 losses have coincided with the suspension of Rodri. Now, I think a lot of people, for the longest time, Rodri was kind of, I wouldn't say understated, but it was always kind of, Fabinho was the best kind of defensive midfielder in the Prem for a while, and then even when talking about Spain, he could never really get a gig over Sergio Busquets. So Rodri always kind of seemed like the second best defensive midfielder in most categories. I think City's recent run in domestic competitions without Rodri goes to show just how important he is to that team. I think he is the first name on the team sheet when he's fit. I think Pep, how much onus and how much emphasis Pep puts on Rodri and the way that he dictates play for Man City, I think goes to show just how good he is. And they've lost 3 out of their last 4 games without him. Well, sorry, I should say 3. They've lost their last 3 domestic games while he's been suspended. I think Rodri's importance to this City team can't be underestimated. I would say he's even more important than Erling Haaland. I think he's the most important player in that City team. And we saw his improvement both in the eyes of Man City and both in the eyes of the media last year. He's parlayed that into having a very good start to the year. He's got suspended and City have dropped. They've lost 3 in a row without him. It's going to be very interesting to see. Should he get an injury? Should he leave? Should he get suspended a couple more times? How City can counteract that, because Calvin Phillips is not the guy to be a proper number 2 for him. John Stones, I think, is a player that can definitely push up into that defensive midfielder role, but not permanently. So I think it's going to be... Rodri's really good. Rodri is so good. And I think how important he is to this Man City team can't be underestimated. I just wanted to point that out, because it was something that I saw, and I was really interested to see how it was something that I saw on Twitter about Rodri and how important he was in terms of games, in terms of the way that he's basically that defensive midfield fulcrum, and how everything goes through him, both defensively and offensively. Defensively, he's like a defensive quarterback in terms of every kind of play the opposition has to go through Rodri at some point. And then in the inverse, every attack that Man City has to go through Rodri at some point. So he's just so important. Defensively, he's unreal, and offensively, he's more than capable. So, yeah, City are ruining the loss of Rodri big time, because he's a fucking very, very good footballer. But yes, I think that is it. I think that is all. I think that is all for this kind of episode. I think that's it. Yeah, nothing left on the run sheet that I think needs to be discussed. So yes, thank you all very much for watching another episode of the Two Footed Tackle podcast. I'm your host, or I've been your host, Ari. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you have, make sure you subscribe, follow, do all the stuff I did in the beginning, all the admin stuff. That's very boring. It would mean more than the world. Make sure you share it around to all your friends, everyone who likes football. Let them know that this exists. I think it would mean the world to me. So yes. Thank you very much. If you have stuck around, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Enjoy your weekend. International break, so we'll be back next week previewing some A-League football, touching on some international football as well, and any other storylines that arise throughout the week. But yes, thank you very much for watching. See you guys next week. Stay well, stay safe, and goodbye.